What's up, Jets fans, and welcome to another edition of Jet Nation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Tereman and Glenn Naughton. A special mid-combine, literally mid-combine, as they are still going through on-field drills. It looks like the defensive linemen right now currently. Combine week is upon us officially. We are getting tons of tweets of notifications of length, weight, height measurements, and vertical jumps on all these freakish athletes. And it's been a whirlwind to keep up with, quite frankly. I got out of work a little late, and it's been very hard to keep up with from the start. Glenn, how's it going tonight?
Going all right. Trying to keep up a little bit here from work. I'd already decided I was gonna follow it on Twitter, catch the highlights, and then sometime in the morning go through the list and when everything is right there for you to look at. But like you said, man, some freakish numbers being put up by these guys, and it seems like every year guys get a little faster, a little bit more freakish, and it's kind of wild to see the numbers that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into it. Our draft topic tonight is our defensive guys, so I feel like this falls right in line with a lot of it because we have talked about several defensive linemen, linebackers, and off-ball linebackers who are participating here tonight. So a lot of these guys are going to be fresh with brand new 40 times to show off and vertical jumps to show off. So I'm excited to get into that. But we do have a little bit of Jets news. Somewhat related to the Jets, Aaron Rodgers did a podcast and he said that he hasn't made a decision. Obviously, Brian Gutekunst said that at the Combine. He has not spoken to Aaron Rodgers yet either. I feel like we're just in wait-and-see mode there. We can kind of skip past that. If you want to go watch the podcast with Aubrey Marcus, you can. You're free to do that. It was a decent podcast if you're a fan of him. He didn't say much about football, though. I got the sense he was playing in 2023, which I think is all that matters. Now, whether it's for the Packers or some other team, we won't find out for a couple days, hopefully, maybe a couple weeks. But the real news that pertains to the Jets and a quarterback is Derek Carr did make an appearance at Indianapolis, met with a handful of teams. The Saints and the Jets were the predominant teams because that was their second visit with him. The Panthers were also added to that list. They met with him as well. I think they met in person and then via phone call afterward as well. So it's kind of weird, all the intertwining of Derek Carr and who is he meeting with and who is he not meeting with. But it seems like it's the Jets, the Saints, the Panthers, and possibly others. His market seems pretty slow, and it seems like he wants to make a decision, but teams aren't really ready to make a decision yet. So what are your thoughts on Derek Carr's visit? I think he met with Woody Johnson, Robert Saleh, and Joe Douglas. So he hit the trifecta again.
Yeah, I was listening to, I want to say it was Scott Mason, Play Like a Jet. I forget who he had on. I did his show a couple weeks ago. We got to have him on soon, by the way.
Yeah, we should.
But he had somebody on who said the opposite. They said that Carr kind of viewed this as his first shot at free agency, and as long as he was signed before the draft, he'd be happy. He was planning on dragging it out. He wanted to meet with every team, give everyone a chance to present their case. So I don't think Carr's in a rush at all. I think he's kind of enjoying the opportunity to do this because he's never done it before. I saw one report. I saw one tweet earlier saying that the Saints are the more anxious, like they want to get a deal done quickly, but who the hell knows? Everyone's out for clickbait. Everyone's out for fake headlines, and I know this, and I've heard that. Every GM in the NFL was apparently checking in with Brandon Marshall this morning to get his latest update on what Aaron Rodgers was up to. So it's just kind of like, listen, I think Aaron Rodgers loves the attention, and Derek Carr is loving the opportunity to do this. That's why Aaron Rodgers goes on a podcast and says, I don't want to drag this out. And they say, what are you going to do? I'm going to drag it out for a little bit longer. So, I mean, come on. Rodgers wants the attention. Carr wants the time to visit with everybody who's interested. Because, these are two different guys in many different ways. And in one way, and that one guy's never had much success because he's been on the worst defense in the NFL his whole career. So Derek Carr is probably enjoying sitting back and looking at rosters and looking at coaching staffs and going over philosophies. And, I think the thing that hurts the Jets most is if he's looking at the roadmap to the playoffs, right? Like who do you have to beat to get to the playoffs? Well, do I want to compete with Josh Allen and really an up-and-coming Dolphins team? Or do I want to compete with the Carolina Panthers and the Falcons and, these sort of teams that are probably a quarterback away from being able to take over their divisions? So the Jets are probably the toughest path in terms of competition, but they probably have the best defense. So he's got a lot to weigh, and Aaron Rodgers is enjoying the spotlight. So my thought is I was fed up with this a month ago. So I just want to I just want the team to make a decision and move forward.
Hey, Derek Carr could go to the NFC South, but I heard the Panthers are looking at re-signing Sam Darnold. So look out. You have competition there for sure. We have a
Yeah.
comment here from Armand. I think the quarterback situation will be known by the 12th or 13th, right before free agency or the legal tampering period begins. And I think that's accurate. I think
Didn't
quarterbacks
Carr
want to
say
know
that?
their team. Well, I'm sorry.
I thought Carr said he wanted to be able to recruit, so he wanted to.
So
I said the
that's it.
draft. I think he said before free agency.
Yeah, and that's what the point I was getting at is like
Yeah, I
these
said the draft. I
quarterbacks
meant
want to
free
know.
agency.
Yeah, they want to know what roster they're on before they start signing new players, obviously. And the pull that a Derek Carr or even an Aaron Rodgers is going to have on some of the players, both current and free agent in the market, is significant. So that for the Jets, they want to get it done. Obviously, Derek Carr should want to get it done, and Aaron Rodgers hopefully will get it done. And I mean, at this point, it seems like it's the Jets or Packers. I mean, based on the other teams that are kind of bowing out or not pursuing Rodgers. I know the Panthers supposedly called about him, but I don't know if they'll trade him inside the NFC. So
And
it's
these are
just a
teams
ton
that
of
are also these are teams that are like the Raiders. I believe the Raiders are out. They just
right.
don't have money.
Yeah,
Other teams, are they really out? Like how many teams call the media to let them know who they're in on and who they're out on? You know,
exactly. Once he's actually available publicly, I feel like the number of teams could be double digits and realistically should be double digits. And I saw the Dolphins were floated out as a potential landing spot. I think Kurt Benkert, a former teammate of Aaron Rodgers, mentioned the Jets and the Dolphins. So, I mean, cool. If he's plugged in enough and wants to say that publicly, that's fine. I mean, we've seen what happens when it's the Jets versus the Dolphins. State taxes, sunny weather, it all kind of wins out. But something that Aaron Rodgers did say that kind of ties into what you mentioned was there are 6 to 8 teams every year, at least in his opinion, that are true contenders. And obviously you have your wild card, your wild teams that could be, in the top 10 to 12 range that shoot up and surprise everybody. But realistically, it's 6 to 8 teams every year. And I think, in my opinion, and this is kind of where my argument has been the whole time, is like with Aaron Rodgers, you look like one of those 1 to 6 teams or 6 to 8 teams. I don't know if you are, but you look like it at least. With Carr, I feel like you're hoping to be the wild card team that shoots up and impresses everybody. That still can happen because we haven't seen what Derek Carr can do with a full gambit of talent offensively and defensively. But I always just felt like that was where my argument lied. And I thought it was a good point that he brought up in that in the podcast there. Like I said, if you want to go check it out, Aubrey Marcus's podcast. But to me, the Packers, they want to move to Jordan Love. It seems like it's written all over the walls. Like, I don't know if they're going to be the ones that say, hey, dude, we don't want you anymore, Aaron Rodgers. Like, we'll let you walk. I feel like it's that's the unknown. And if Rodgers is going to give them the chance to bow out and say, no, we will move to Jordan Love, are the Packers willing to pull the trigger and actually say, we're going to move to Jordan Love? It's a tough decision to be put in. I thought we were going to have the answer by this time, last week when we were on with Dom C, and unfortunately it didn't happen. So I'm going to double down and say by next podcast, we will have a quarterback. It's going to be March 9th next week. And I feel like if it's not next one, it's the week after it. I'm going to triple down if it's not. So we're coming to an end of this. I feel like at this point, I'm just so tired of exhausting all the options on Twitter. Like, we know what it is, and we're going to have to give up something for Rodgers versus nothing for Carr. I get it. Like, it's cool. And who knows what the compensation eventually will be. I think if there's a world where you get Aaron Rodgers and you don't give up the 13th pick, even if you give up, the 40 whatever pick in the second round and a conditional first next year, like, that's fine. I feel like that's the no-brainer option, but it's all a lot of unknowns, and hopefully everything gets answered quickly. It's funny, we started talking about combine rumors and we didn't talk about a single player at the combine, which I think is really funny. But we can get into a slight combine rumor. I don't really want to dive deep into it because we don't have all the answers, and it's not for two dopey bloggers to sit here and speculate on what happened. But Jalen Carter did have to leave the scouting combine in Indianapolis. He had to return to Georgia after 2 misdemeanor warrants were issued for his arrest, reckless driving, and racing. And this is stemming from an event in, I believe, January of this year that took the life of a former teammate and a staff member of the Georgia football team. So just a really unfortunate situation. And we have to talk about it because he's not competing at the combine right now as the defensive linemen are on the field working out. But we're not going to sit here and, oh, he's guilty or oh, he's innocent and he should still be a first round pick or whatever it is. So I just wanted to mention it. If you have any thoughts about it, we can kind of skip over that one. Yeah, it's one I'm not really.
No, I'm of the belief that you wait till we know. Right now, it's
exactly.
just talking rumors and he's like I hope he didn't do something stupid that caused it. That's all I'll say because I don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened that wasn't there.
Exactly. I hope for everybody's sake that the truth does come forward and whatever happens from there happens from there. Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh met with the media this week. Obviously, Joe Douglas is in person at the Combine. It was reported that the Jets coaching staff was not going to be at the Combine, so Robert Saleh was home. He did an interview from Forum Park this afternoon. Said he had a stomach bug, so maybe it's a good thing that he didn't go to the Combine. Did you happen to listen to them or have any takeaways? Because I had a couple takeaways that I can shoot off real quick.
No, I did listen to them. I listened to Douglas. I read Saleh's. The biggest, I was surprised how bullish they were on Dwayne Brown. I thought there'd be a little more uncertainty there. They sound like they're all in on having him back.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It just surprised me a little. The one thing, and this wasn't something that came as a surprise at all. It was 100% expected, but it was something I thought was worth talking about because of how we saw the Panthers do it with Sam Darnold, and what the Packers might have to do with Jordan Love. And that's the 50-year option on these first-round picks. Now, of course, they said they haven't decided on Becton. You wouldn't expect them to exercise it on Becton because they have to do it before this season takes place, and they'll have seen nothing from him in a couple of years. But there is a part of me that wonders, even with the little bit that Becton has shown, or the little time he's played, he's shown he can be a dominant player. I'm wondering, do they consider it and say, listen, what this guy will cost us as a free agent if he blows up this year and we don't put the 50-year option.
Yeah.
You may have to franchise him or give him a huge contract. Like, basically, will it save you money in the long run to basically gamble on his health? If they look at, you look at Mekhi Becton, we didn't see an image of him for a year, and now he's tweeting out pictures every 10 minutes. He looks like a damn power forward. I can't wait for him to get back on the field. Yeah. And if the Jets are happy with him and they say, you know what, we think he's going to be healthy, we're going to gamble on the fact he will. And I don't think they'll exercise the option, but I don't think it's a 0% chance. The more I look at them, I'm like, if they're sitting around the table and looking at him and thinking, we know what he's capable of, and if we don't tag him and he's a free agent after year 4, you're looking at, top dollar. And really it's similar again that like the Packers with Jordan Love, if Rodgers does come back and they don't deal him, do GMs and front offices start exercising 50-year options to basically get a 1-year look, and say, look, maybe we'll be wrong and maybe we'll pay the guy $18 million and he'll leave, but we would rather that than have him leave as a free agent and blow up somewhere else, and we developed it and someone else gets to take advantage of that. So like I said, I don't think they're going to exercise Becton's option, but with as good as he's looking, if they feel like he'll be ready and if the medical team, because remember, an important part of the Becton injury, for those who don't recall, it was said before he got injured this year, like before camp kicked off, was it Dr. Cho who does the injury analysis on Twitter? They said that a re-injury to that knee because of the way the surgery is done is likely, or is more likely than it would have been without the surgery. And he got the exact injury they predicted. Well, now he's had another full year to recover from that. So if they sit down and go, look, he's healed up from both surgeries, no reason to expect re-injury, we think, and if he's dropped all this weight, we think he'll be fine. Do the Jets say, look, let's roll the dice and exercise the 5th year and maybe get a discount in year 5 if he's playing well, rather than paying top dollar if he plays well and has a chance to hit free agency?
Yeah, I think when you look at the on-field body of work with Mekhi Becton, it's an obvious no that you wouldn't pay him a 5th-year option. But when you look at all the selfies he's posting from the gym asking if you've worked out today, I think that's encouraging signs, 1, to his work ethic, 2, to like where his mind is at, and like he's really ready to take football to the next level and really like become an NFL football player. So I think for those reasons, you could easily make the case to pay Mekhi Becton a 5th-year option. The fact that they're now fully guaranteed contracts kind of makes me a bit hesitant, especially in this offensive tackle market. But like you said, if they take the gamble and they don't pay him that this year, they go into his fourth year, he does well, doesn't necessarily ball out, but does well enough where he's healthy for, let's say 15 games. He was a starter for most of them, and he played well enough where you want to see what he has in the future. That price tag has now just shot up a lot. And I think the Giants are seeing that with Daniel Jones, obviously a completely different set of circumstances with Daniel Jones, but he wasn't very encouraging his first few years, and they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. So now they're kind of on the hook of now Daniel Jones wants $40 to $45 million. And I know the offensive tackle market isn't that substantial, but I mean, Mekhi Becton could be a $20 million offensive tackle if he blows up this year, happens to make a Pro Bowl, even as an alternate or whatever, has a very good year. I tweeted it out, 2023 comeback player of the year. And I know that's a long shot for offensive tackles, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who's missed 2 full seasons. If he comes back and plays 15, 16, 17 games, his name should be there in that realm of I should be comeback player of the year for sure. So yeah, I'm very torn on it. Right now I say no. But I'm also very, I don't know, the worries about the offensive tackle position lately have really just kind of subsided a little bit for me. I mean, I'm a big Dwayne Brown supporter. I know that the coaching staff is. I didn't think they were this much until they both came out and said something about it. But I was always like, let's get Dwayne Brown back. He's still under contract. I understand his deal is a little extensive. I think it's like $10 or $11 million cap hit. But especially if you bring in a Carr or a Rodgers, like he came to the Jets after Mekhi Becton got hurt, and he saw a future with this team, at least in the short term. So like he's obviously going to think that when you get an established veteran quarterback under center. So Dwayne Brown to me is somebody I'm not really worried about. His injury was freakish. He played all season with it. Whatever it was, they keep saying like he shouldn't have played the season on it, and I don't think it's going to affect his future, and that's why he did it. So to have him back full strength, I'm not really too worried about it. Obviously, I know he has his weird rest days during the year, but that's to be expected with veteran players. I did want to mention this. Joe Douglas did open his press conference with a joke. He said, I know you're all going to ask me about the safeties. And I immediately just wrote in all capital letters, Brian Branch at 13 or Christopher Smith at 42 or 43. And I just thought it was really funny that he mentioned safeties because, one, the Jets need a safety. 2, there's some damn good ones at the top of this draft in the first, second, third round, that top 100 range. And I don't know. I'm not sold on offensive tackle at 13, so I could see Brian Branch being the pick at 13. He gave his normal GM speak about no quarterback timetable. He's respecting everybody's process. Saleh echoed the same thing. Everybody's in wait and see mode. That's obvious on Aaron Rodgers. We know that that's about. Flipping over to Robert Saleh's press conference, he talked about the new offensive staff coming in, mainly the knowledge that they had with quarterbacks that are expected to be available or are already available. He did mention, though, that Todd Downing is kind of going to be the Greg Knapp role. I don't know if that's exactly going to be – I know Todd Downing, he's the pass game coordinator, so I don't know if that's not quarterbacks coach. Obviously, that's Calabrese, and I feel like Greg Knapp was more a senior advisor quarterbacks coach, but if they're going to do the same type of role, that's fine. I do think it's kind of nice that every time Rob Saleh does say Knapp's name, he just, God rest his soul, every time. I find that so cool. I mean, it just shows how tight-knit they actually were. Not really much else from him. I wanted to touch on Mekhi Becton. I'm glad you brought it up. And I wanted to ask you this question. I'm going to give you 4 options. I want you to rank them, just loosely rank them, how worried you are about them. And it's all offensive tackles. We'll start with Dwayne Brown, Mekhi Becton, Max Mitchell, and a rookie at 13. Can you just loosely rank them as how worried you'd be if they had to start week 1? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, rookie at 13. I'm assuming we're talking about the guys that we believe are worthy of being
only,
taken.
yeah. So I'd say Skoronski, Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, not even DeJuan Jones. No, right. No Anton Harrison. None of those guys. No, just the top 3.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll start. The one that would worry me the least is Becton, because if he's starting, I'm assuming he's healthy, and I think he can be an absolute monster there. I think I would say it'd be a toss-up between Dwayne Brown and a guy like Skoronski or any of the other top 3 or 4 guys at tackle. I think 3 or 4 of those guys are ready to go now. I think there's guys that aren't being talked about who are going to be ready to go. I think who's it? Kuiper just mocked Harrison, I believe, to the
Anton
Jets,
Harrison, yeah,
who
Oklahoma
we've talked
offensive
about a little
tackle.
bit, who's largely been sort of talked about as a second round guy.
Yep.
But there are some other guys like you got Wright in Tennessee, who I think is a good player, and he plays both sides, Darnell Wright. So I wouldn't mind seeing him. But again, he's not going to go at 11. But
Right.
he's still a really good player who, like I said, he's played the left and the right. So I wouldn't mind that. But the biggest worry to me would be Max Mitchell. I like him. He did a
Mhm.
nice job last year, but he's far from a finished product, and he's not a guy who's played a ton of left tackle as a pro. So he would worry me the most. Becton I'd be the most comfortable with. And then
Mhm.
second, third, you can flip, interchange, because Brown, again, is, as once you enter this age, like at what point do you lose a step or a big enough
Mhm.
step that it's going to impact you? Like you might say he did a solid job this year, which he did, but maybe he loses a half a step, and then you come into camp this year, or week one, and you're like, oh, he's lost a step now, and now he's not that same guy anymore.
Mhm.
So yeah, Becton would be my first choice, a healthy Becton starting, and then give me a rookie at 13 or Brown, and then Max Mitchell would be the least desirable option. I think he's a nice backup. I think if he's going to start, I'd rather it be on the right side.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I'd actually just flip flop Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton. Obviously, if he's 100% healthy, Mekhi Becton should be the better option. Until further notice, I'm just going to put Dwayne Brown slightly ahead of him. Plus, he's the left tackle only type of player. So I could see a situation where it's like Dwayne Brown, left tackle, Mekhi Becton, right tackle. And that's cool too. I'm very okay with that. And yeah, Mekhi Becton, so him and the rookie at 13 would be that B tier to me. And then Max Mitchell, I'm not like completely worried about, but I think Jets fans got a little overboard about how good he actually is. He started a couple games, he did well. He didn't, he outperformed his fourth round pick status, but I don't think you're muted again. I just don't think that he like played that well where it's like, okay, now we can think about him being a offensive tackle or right tackle
Yeah,
starter. I think he's a
he
swing
did a nice
tackle.
job, and especially for his draft slot. So you're very happy with it.
Yeah.
But I think I try to. I know in years past I was guilty of it. I've tried to get better about jumping the gun on these guys. Like we see a guy play a couple of solid games, and we just kind of assume like, oh great, we got to find this guy's a future starter. Like pump the brakes. He might
Yeah.
be. I'm not saying he won't. Just saying we haven't seen. We've seen enough that he's shown he can compete, and
Mhm.
let's see him get better. And if he does, that's. I mean, we talked about how great this draft class was, and hopefully he's a part of it. And that
Yeah.
someone just asked in the chat what's going on with Mitchell. Just what you said in the question. They mentioned the blood clots, but
Mhm.
we've seen guys come back from that in the past. So, and I think the Jets have said they expect him to be, ready to go at some point, and that's kind of what we're all expecting. Someone else asked if we think the Jets have met with the Ravens or talked with the Ravens about Jackson. No word on that.
Mm.
Like I said, I'd be really surprised if the Jets in their current position, if Woody or the Jets are saying, let's go pay $50 million to this guy who's just missed a huge chunk of time the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, if he's available and the Jets are serious contenders, I think he would be number one on my board. Don't get me wrong, but I just think that there's too much meat left on the bone between him and Baltimore, where they're both going to want to work a deal out. And I know the NFLPA is working with Lamar as like a pseudo agent because Lamar represents himself, and they stand firm on like he should get more in guarantees and everything like that than Deshaun Watson did last year. And we could sit up here and have a separate argument whether Deshaun Watson was, deserving of that money. But like, if a team pays you that money, like a team pays you that money. So what is Deshaun Watson going to do? Can we just like adjust that, make it a little less? No, like now that kind of screwed up the quarterback market. Let's be honest. And Lamar Jackson is going to try to, take full advantage of that. And he's going to try to get all those guarantees. I want it to happen. I would love for it to happen. It's not my money. So I don't care if Woody Johnson has to, put $200 million aside for Lamar Jackson, but I don't see it being a realistic option. And if we're still holding on to hope, it's probably 1%, if that.
It reminds me of the way it reminds me of what Al Davis did with the corner market when they gave Namdi Musaga, whatever, I can't even
Oh,
remember his name.
right.
They
Yes,
gave him
yes.
all that money. So then Revis was like, well, I need to be the top paid guy. And the Jets,
Yep.
like if I'm the Jets, I'm saying, look, we're not adjusting our offer based on a lunatic owner who
Yeah.
grossly overpaid for a guy. And that's what happens though. It just takes one owner to screw up the whole market.
And
Jacoby Brissett better than Rodgers. I would disagree with that, Matthew, in the chat there.
yeah, sorry about that.
I don't
That's
think
a
it's
hard
quite
no.
April Fool's, so I'm not sure what's going on with that comment, but chalk me up in
Yeah,
the disagree column.
for
So yeah, one player can mess up the market. That's kind of what happened with Deshaun Watson. And like I said, the guaranteed money that's being discussed, we don't, we've seen some of the media say, well, we don't know that it's 50. Okay, well, assuming it's 40 or 50, because no one knows what it is except Lamar and the Ravens.
right.
So do we just not talk about it ever until he signs, or can we talk about what's being speculated? And if it's 40, 50, that's absolutely nuts, and I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, there's actually an article, I believe it was Andrew Brandt, put out an article about how the quarterback market isn't as detrimental to the cap as other teams, or as like, the public perception is. And like, it's still workable with like all these quarterback contracts. And I don't know, like I see those contracts, like the big contracts, like Deshaun Watson's about to hit for like 40 something on the cap. And I just don't see it. I don't know how you can possibly put together the rest of your roster and go compete when you got one single guy taking up a lot of cap space.
Well, Damian Woody said it a few years ago in a tweet, and I think he's right. Like when he said it, I was like, oh, that's a little bit crazy. And then over the years, I've been like, I always remember it. I'm like, he might be right about that. And Damian Woody said, quarterbacks need a separate salary cap. Like you can't, if you have to pay a guy $50 million, if that's what it's going to take, you got to pay the other 52 guys. And 25% of your salaries, your cap space is gone on one dude. And you just, it's not doable. And thank you, Finger Lakes. Apparently, the brilliant Brissett over Rodgers is a common comment from Matthew. Matt, you know what else they say? If Matthew wins, they don't get any of those. They can have those another year. So you save yourself money, draft picks, and wins if you get Brissett.
I was just about to say, I don't know if the Jets should be in the mindset of saving a ton of things in for the future. And I'm not saying I'm not saying mortgage the future by any chance, but I've seen multiple, draft experts coming out and saying that this is a somewhat down year in terms of talent. First round, it's not as heavy as it has been in other years. I wouldn't be surprised if they get if they get Aaron Rodgers, they'll probably stick and pick at 13 if they have it. But if they get like a Derek Carr and they want to move down from 13 and get more picks in, next year, that's okay. But like, I don't see them saving all this thing for the future that realistically Joe Douglas and Rob Saleh might not even be here for.
No, their window is now. They're not in save anything mode.
And don't think about 2025
quarterback thing. People keep, I can't believe that people are honestly saying like, oh, maybe quarterback at 13.
No.
And I'm always really, I'm always really careful about being too like, like I know this and I know the answer to that. And I'm going to tell, like, I give my opinion. Sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm as sure of no quarterback at 13 as I am of anything I've ever said about this team. Like this team's got to win now. They don't have, there's no quarterback in this draft who you can look at and say, this dude's coming in and taking us to the playoffs. And I know there's not a playoff mandate and there shouldn't be, but there is a unspoken, this team better make some damn noise this year mandate.
Exactly.
And you don't do that by bringing in a guy who's never taken an NFL snap. It's not happening. It is not. Yeah. I would bet my next paycheck that it's not quarterback at 13. Now, if, as you said, if they trade down from 13 to 20 and somebody falls and they've added an extra second.
Yeah.
Maybe, but no. So stop. Not happening.
It's funny. Some people, and I'm not saying everybody, but some people I do see that grab a quarterback at 13. I'm literally preaching the opposite. Pray that a quarterback falls to 13, and then a team does what the Bears did 2 years ago for Justin Fields. They came up from 11 to 20. They gave the Giants a future one, and they got their quarterback. I want that to happen. I want Anthony Richardson. That's only going to happen.
See, I don't have the draft order in front of me, but that's only happening if there's a team at 14 or 15 that needs a quarterback. Because
New England and Green Bay, I know, are the two directly after us.
And
I was thinking
Green Bay's going with Love if they have him.
I know that this is kind of far back, but maybe the Saints. But that's from like 30 or like 29 or whatever it was that they got from Denver, which is through Miami, through San Francisco.
Yeah.
That pick has been turned over quite a bit. I saw another comment in here. It actually was from Finger Lakes. If your biggest issues are below average safety and thin at linebacker, but you get a good quarterback, you should be fine. Chiefs won with a rookie secondary because they have a stud quarterback. And I think that goes along with everything we've kind of been saying. Like, yes, there are holes in the boat that you need to plug, like some much more major than others. But once you solve the quarterback issue, you can let some holes go in the boat because you have essentially people bucketing water faster than the water's coming in to your boat. So a quarterback kind of masks all those, flaws.
Yeah,
You just
the
don't want as
quarterback can help
many
you overcome that
flaws
stuff.
on offense. I feel like you want to shore up their offensive line a little bit. You don't have to spend, their first 3 picks on offensive line, but maybe get an offensive lineman, a weapon, and then you go plug the holes on defense in the draft. I feel like that should be the philosophy with any quarterback they get.
Yep. But we ready to get into some draft? Some
Hell yeah. We're
our
right at the
guys.
halfway point. We got to get into the draft talk. Like we said, they're on TV right now. If you're tuning in to us and the Combine, we appreciate it. We're going to talk about our defensive guys. I'll let you start it off. I guess we'll go edge and D tackle separate. I know we had Dom on last week, so we kind of streamlined all the positions, but we now have a little bit more time. We can separate them. Edge, D tackle, linebacker, corner, safety. So you kick it off with your edge guys.
Hang on, I'm going to pull them up here.
Mm-hmm.
I got was on the wrong page. Here we go.
Oh, hold on. Real quick before we get into this, is a draft-related question. What about the reports from insiders that the Jets are looking up to trade up in the draft to get Stroud? I haven't seen the report. Not saying it's not true. If it is true, I hope it's not true because I don't want them to trade up. CJ Stroud would be my preferred quarterback, though. We discussed that last week on our offensive guys with Dom C. If you guys want to go check that out after the show, I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's what my quarterback 1, but I still don't trade up and don't even take him at 13. Get your quarterback in the next week or 2, like we talked about earlier. Sorry, go ahead with your edge.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna throw out a few names, and they 2 of them. Let's see, yeah, 2 of the 3 I'm gonna butcher, but that's life. So it goes. And one of them, obviously, we talked about. He's tearing it up right now at the Combine. Adetomiwa Adebawore out of Northwestern. Yep. I've discussed him several times on the show. I think he's a guy that, well, I know that, for me personally, I was watching Northwestern Ohio State earlier this year, or TCU. No, yeah, he's Northwestern edge against Ohio State. And he was living in the backfield. And I'm watching this going, Ohio State's just stacked on the O-line always. He's facing NFL prospects because everyone on Ohio State's O-line goes to the NFL, and he was just killing them. He was unblockable. And I was like, I literally haven't heard this guy's name mentioned ever, at any point leading up to the draft. And then we started hearing his name. He got the Senior Bowl invite, and then Jim Nagy started tweeting a lot about him, saying that this guy could get some second round love and blah 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 blah. And now I think with his performance he's having right now at the Combine, I think he might enter the conversation as a first rounder. Again, and even now, I don't think PFN updates their rankings that often. Mm-hmm. They've got him at 97 now. I'm pretty sure that when I first looked at him, he was in the hundreds. But now he's one of their top 100 picks or prospects. Another guy, Zach Harrison, who is an Ohio State product, is a guy that I really like. He moves well, long-limbed guy who's going to play on the edge for you. And another guy, who's I'm sure I've mentioned him in some previous tweets. Habakkuk Baldonado, Pitt. You remember, Dylan, and I've said it a few times when I messaged you last year and said this Pitt front 7 is they just have so many good players. And it was Baldonado, it was Cansey, it was Dennis, it was all these guys up front for them. And he's a guy I think who can play a little bit inside, a little bit outside. Not the most explosive guy, but good enough to beat you on the edge. And he can cause trouble up the middle. Good all around player. Again, I thought he would get an invite to the Senior Bowl, but he wasn't there. I think he was at the East-West Shrine. Yaya Diaby, we've talked about quite a bit. Yep. He's a guy who plays a little bit all over the place. And one more I wanted to mention. I did. I don't know if I mentioned him on the show. David Perales, Fresno State D lineman. Played inside and outside. They list him as an edge, but he's played both. He must have had 4 or 5 batted passes at the line of scrimmage this year. Just kept seeing him do that. Like, you don't realize how rare that is. So when you see a guy do it
Yeah.
3 times, 4 times, 5 times, so good all around player, keeps his eyes in the backfield. Kind of like, he uses long limbs to block up passing lanes so he can affect the game without getting to the quarterback. I like him a lot.
The second name you mentioned, that was Zach Harrison, Ohio State, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, Dwayne Brugler an hour ago. I'm told Ohio State Zach Harrison suffered a minor hamstring strain and unfortunately isn't working out, but he does plan to go through full testing at his pro day. So I thought I saw that. I remembered seeing that at work, and I was like, "Oh, Zach Harrison, just quick."
They had Ohio State had somebody blow up the 40. Then I thought it was Harrison, but they have so many guys there.
He might have heard it after, and he isn't doing the on-field workouts. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, did he? Oh, so he did start doing drills.
I believe. I think that's
I thought you were saying Brugler sent that out hours ago before the combine.
No, 1 hour ago.
Gotcha.
1 hour.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So he probably did have a good 40.
And according to NFL.com, Adebaware, they have him graded as a 6.12. I'm not exactly sure how their scale works, but it says underneath good backup with the potential to develop into starter. So yeah, I hope that he's with it. I think he's definitely a top 100 guy at this point. I mean, he was blowing up at the combine, and when Daniel Jeremiah starts talking to Rich Eisen about you on the NFL Network, your name starts generating a lot of buzz. And I think when it's all said and done, he'll probably be a third-round prospect for sure. But he was just insane.
I know that
insane numbers.
I know none of these guys can be perfect, but NFL.com, I remember when there was Sam Darnold comp was Andrew Luck. So
and I don't know how their grade system works. I don't know
what the grain of salt, but yeah, and he might be. He looks at these guys might be. Every guy I mentioned might be a bust. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows.
Exactly.
We're guessing. We watch people play football. We go, I like the way that guy plays football, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, we have our biases and what we look for in certain positions, and whether it matches up with what teams think. It doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, we have fun. All right, my guys. I was going to mention Adebaware, but I knew for sure you were going to mention him. So Felix Anundike-Uzomah, Kansas State, is another guy that we've mentioned. Trevor Sikkema from PFF took a video of him at the podium, and he talked about how he sets up his pass rush moves on offensive tackles every game. He said, my go-to move is to beat him with power early to see if he's weak. And then he starts with a long arm move to see if he can handle it and then works around it from there. And I thought, damn, dude, that's such a nuanced answer from a young prospect who's never really, done anything at like a very high level. I know this year he had a very good season, but like this guy isn't like, a 5-year veteran. And that's something I would expect from a 5-year veteran to say. So I thought that was really cool from him. I like his bend. Kind of a theme with all my guys here at Edge is bend. BJ Ojulari, definitely another person I've talked about before on the podcast. I currently have him ranked inside my top 5 edge rushers. I think it's like Will Anderson, Keon White, Tyree Wilson, and then I have BJ Ojulari over Lucas Van Ness, and I know that might be considered a hot take, but I was in a Q&A forum, and I asked Connor Rogers what his thoughts were about BJ Ojulari, and it wasn't even from a Jets perspective. It was just, hey, I had eyes on Ojulari and Van Ness, and I wasn't really sure what to think. What are your thoughts? And he immediately said that Ojulari would eat in Robert Saleh's system. I wasn't even sure that he would be a fit. I feel like he's kind of a stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker, but if he could put on a little bit of weight and be a 3-4 end for us, I think that's amazing. So I wasn't expecting that answer whatsoever. And so to have somebody, who's done this before the draft, I consider Connor a draft expert for BR. I mean, he's been doing it for about 10 years. So for him to say Ojulari over Van Ness and kind of confirm that for me was really cool. I like BJ Ojulari a lot. And then my third guy, Byron Young, he ran a 4.43 40. And I mean, I'm not going to like pound the table for a guy just because he runs fast in the 40. It just kind of confirms the bias or, confirms what I saw on tape about him. And that's his explosiveness and his bend and his ability to get to the pass rusher. And just watching him line up for the 40, I feel like you get a really good glimpse of their body type because they're in, form-fitting clothes. It's all muscle shirts and shorts and whatnot. And he's just got a long, slender build. And I can just see him across from, a Michael Clemens or a Jermaine Johnson and just really wreaking havoc for this Jets defense. And I feel like if they want to go younger on the edge positions, any of these guys, I mean, I'm pounding the table for. So, all right, let's move on. Defensive tackles, the big guys in the middle. Obviously, Quinton Williams needs to get a new contract. That should happen quicker than they should sign a quarterback, in my opinion. But defensive tackle, who you got there, Glenn?
I actually did a quick sort of combine sleeper, some lesser known guys article about, I don't know, a couple hours ago. And one of the names I threw on there that I've mentioned throughout the season is Oklahoma State defensive tackle Tyler Lacey. He supposedly checks in at 280, 290. Primarily tackle, lines up outside a little bit, really strong guy, uses his hands well. Didn't have a ton of sacks, but he was a disruptive guy. Another guy who had quite a few batted balls, as far as I can recall. Like I said, lines up inside and out. Strong dude. Dante Stills, West Virginia, who I think had a really good start to the combine. I saw his name mentioned earlier. I was tweeting out about him last year. Loved his motor, loved his strength. Made a lot of plays for that team. Made some plays in big spots. Like clearly a guy the juices get flowing when the game is on the line. So sort of a big time playmaker there. And like I said, I'm pretty sure he had himself a nice start to his day out in Indy. A couple other guys, Nesta J. Silvera, who I've mentioned a few times, a real presence in the middle, big dude. PJ Mustipher, Penn State. He's kind of classed as those guys. I've mentioned a few times now, Dylan, guys who I really liked last year and just kind of forgot about because I'm trying to watch 5,000 players at once.
Yeah.
And I turned on Penn State a few weeks ago. I forget who I was watching. And they're showing the lineups. And I was like, oh, my God, Mustipher. I forgot because I thought he was going to come out last year. I liked him. I had a lot of his clips.
Yep.
And he didn't come out. And he played like literally, one of the first plays of the game, completely had a dominant rep up front. And I was like, all right, he's still looking good, still looking like a player. So he was one. And Colby Wooden from Auburn is another guy who seems like he can be a difference maker, explosive, quick guy up the middle. You see him shoot the gaps. He beats guys to the A gap quite a bit. And I forget his exact numbers, but I watched one of his games the other day. He played really well, was a reminder. And of course, my guy Kalijah Cansey, who I've mentioned many times throughout the year. He's probably the highest rated guys. I have this thing, like I notice every year when I start watching prospects, I start with like number 700. Like the top 100, I feel I'm going to hear about those guys all year long from every draft pundit on the net. I'll look at those guys over the last month of the season. But I spend so much of the season looking at guys probably starting from the UDFA level and working my way up.
Right. Yeah.
That's why like today, of course I watch, you can't not see some Georgia, some Ohio State, but today was the first time, and I don't know how long, that I was like, let me turn on a Georgia game. And great players in that game, and they were playing Kentucky, and I saw some really good stuff out of Manning, the guard I've talked about there. So Yasir Abdullah, who I mentioned in that article.
Not surprising.
Best time 4.57. He was in my top 5 article that I just mentioned. He's been one of my guys all year too. I should have mentioned him with the edge players. Telling you, I don't know if you ever got around to it, but watch that game against Pitt, man. He was unbelievable. One of the best performances to see a player ever have.
I finally have to, just sit down and watch him and Yaya fully just go through all the games that I can find on Louisville. Yeah. Shout out, by the way, because we're going to use his clips eventually on this podcast. I just feel it. Caddy's Cut Ups. Shout out to him. His Patreon, amazing. Just subscribe to it. I recommend everybody subscribe to it.
Yeah, I signed up yesterday, so I'm just waiting for my email confirmation.
That 3-day wait process in order to get the link of confirmation to get into the database was the longest wait of my life. But once I got in there, I was like, all right, this is game changing. I immediately started going in, watching all these cornerbacks that you can't watch TV copies of. I went back to Devon Witherspoon, who I'm kind of spoiling a little bit, but Caddy's Cut Ups, Patreon, best $24 a year you'll spend on any football related content. My defensive tackles, Keanu Benton, Wisconsin. I've talked about him, I feel like 4 weeks in a row, but I just have to. I think he's the guy that at the Senior Bowl really opened my eyes of all the interior guys, defensive and offensive. Wasn't really impressed with some of the guards and centers that he went up against, but I want to say it was the Troy guy, Jake Andrews at Senior Bowl. He just went up to him and just smacked him, and his helmet just spun right around in a one-on-one rep. Just heavy hands, ass and legs guy. I started watching his tape. I think he's probably going to end up being a second-round guy. I'm hoping he slips to the third round, but I feel like he's kind of the John Michael Schmitz, where it's like, oh, the cat's out of the bag with this guy, and now he's really on everybody's radar, and that sweet spot guy to get in your second, third round mock is always Keanu Benton. So for me, I hope the Jets land him. Obviously, I can understand why they don't. And then my second defensive tackle, somebody that I haven't really done a dive on, but I know he's at the combine. He had a 33-inch vertical. I watched him do one of the pass rush drills, and I didn't even have the laptop on. It was on mute. But the way he slapped the bags, you just knew that there was a pop in his hands. And that's Moro Ojimo from Texas. Kind of a little bit of bias for me because I like watching a lot of Texas tape. I feel like if I see a team that plays Texas that year, I'm going to watch the Texas tape. I know they're not loaded with talent on offense or defense, but they have really good talent. And if I can watch, any Bijan or Roshan, I mean, that's always good. And a little bit of Quinn Ewers here and there is always good too. But Moro Ojimo is a guy that I'm excited for, defensive tackle. I don't have his measurables, confirmed measurables on me, but I think he's a sleeper, probably fifth round, like late guy. So I don't hear anybody's buzz, about him. But if I'm the first one to talk about Moro Ojimo, that's fine. All right, let's get into linebackers.
Just threw up an Ojimo clip there if you want to clip that.
Oh, perfect. I didn't see it. I was looking at the other screen. It's the problem of having 3 screens right now trying to operate.
Got a hand up. That's the pass down coming off the outside.
And that's 4th down too. That's great. Him and there's another D lineman, Keandre Coburn. They were getting some buzz at the combine from DJ. So Texas, I mean, they're not, loaded with talent, but they have a good amount of, mid-tier talent that does get drafted. All right, linebackers. I know where this is going.
Well, since you're talking about Texas, I'll start with DeMarvion Overshown.
Perfect. Yep.
The converted safety. I forget which game it was. Was it Oklahoma? I forget. I threw on a Texas game last year, and I think within the first sort of 2 series, he had a blocked punt, he had a sack, he had a tackle for loss, and I was like, all right, I'm taking notes on this dude, like literally just impact play. And then once you say he's converted safety, he moves well. He wears a million wristbands all up and down his body. I'm not sure what that's all about, but it makes it easy to find him on the field, so that was kind of convenient. But DeMarvion Overshown, a guy that I really like at linebacker. We don't have to. I don't think I have to say any more about Dan Henley. He's sort of been one of my top guys from week 1. Well, maybe 2 or 3. Of course, my guy Windman is going back to college, so Overshown is the guy, probably the guy that I talked about most this year. Drew Sanders is going to be a monster. It's hard to say my guy when it's somebody that, like, it's a first rounder. Like, anyone who's watched him has got to love him or you're crazy. Ivan Pace, we've talked about quite a bit at Cincinnati. Guy lived in opposing backfields. Size was a little bit of a concern, but at the Senior Bowl in the game, we saw him shed blockers with ease who were much bigger than him. A guy who I probably haven't talked about enough in terms of how much I like him, Jack Campbell, Iowa. I know I've talked about him, but he's right up there to me with Henley, with Overshown. He's a guy who's I thought he was much better this year against the pass. I mean, he wasn't bad against the pass last year. And then a later round guy, Jeremy Banks, who I think had himself a nice start to the combine. I think I saw his name down earlier for one of the drills. And like I said, he's a Tennessee product who I'm sure I've mentioned during the year. And I guess I'll leave it at that. I mean, if you let me, man, I'll mention 20 linebackers. But
I was going to say, it's kind of your position is linebackers.
Yeah, I love it. I think they're the best athletes on the field, and the good ones are so much fun to watch. I'll leave it with that group, but there are some really good ones.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jeremy Banks just ran his 40 and he stumbled a little bit. I'm not sure if it was him. I'm kind of loosely paying attention to that, but I figured you were going to come with a lot of linebacker names, so I tried to pick a couple. One that I don't think I've talked about on this podcast yet, he was a Senior Bowl guy, Cam Jones from Indiana. I think the last time I checked, and I don't really look at the rankings of PFF, PFN, whatever. I'm not a huge mock draft guy at this stage of the game, but he was in like the 200s, and I don't understand that. Cam Jones, Indiana, I thought he was very good at the Senior Bowl, impressed me. I mean, a lot of the linebackers stood out, but I don't think he did anything that's like, oh no, like he's a 7th round guy. He could probably be a 4th or 5th round guy. It just depends on I guess,
Yeah.
flavor with linebackers. Yeah, I'm not going to mention Deion Henley, but I'm going to mention Deion Henley, another guy who's expected to be a combine guy, really explosive athlete. And then the last guy is another Senior Bowl guy, but that's really all I've seen as far as the linebackers. And that's Dorian Williams. I think he could be that CJ Mosley type replacement. I know they have Jamie and Sherwood kind of waiting in the wings, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Jamie and Sherwood stopping you from drafting somebody who could potentially be better than Jamie and Sherwood. So for me, Dorian Williams, Tulane, he did really good in the cover drills, the pass protection drills versus the running backs. I thought he was really athletic. Heard he's going to fly at the combine, which I think is really interesting. I love linebackers that are fast. I know they're kind of becoming a smaller mold of linebackers, and I know some teams don't like that, but I kind of prefer those 6-foot guys that can play sideline to sideline and still really pack a punch when they hit. So Dorian Williams is the guy for me that I really like. Now we get into a position that I think the Jets will not draft, but I still
Wait, hang on. I couldn't
sorry,
get
what's
out a
up?
linebacker that easy.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
One that I mentioned a lot during the year, and I forgot to throw in again, only because I saw him mentioned the other day as like someone saying what we've been saying on the show. Is it sort of an under the radar guy, Isaiah Moore, North Carolina,
Yes.
NC State.
NC State, yeah.
He's dealt with some injuries. But another dude, I think I messaged you about this. I'm sure I did. And I've only watched a little bit of him, but I rewatched Michigan TCU the other day. Dude, D Winters was I'm watching D Winters in that game. I'm like, this guy would be a first. If this was the only game you ever saw him play, you'd take him in the first round.
Yeah.
I think he had 4 tackles for loss, and I'm talking like screaming downhill through the A gap and blowing guys up in the backfield 4 times. And he had a pick 6. He had some pressures. I'm like, this dude is nuts. Like, and then I look at his numbers and they're not. I'm like, all right, what's going on? Did he just play out of his mind that day? Maybe he did.
Right.
But I guess I can't say he's one of my guys. He's a guy that I was blown away by the other day. So I plan on watching more of him in the coming days and weeks. And,
which game was this, by the way? I'm gonna write it down.
This was the playoff game against Michigan.
Oh, okay, yep.
Dude, he was, and I mean, the broadcast kept saying it. Like, he's playing the game of his life. Like, he was a monster.
I guess we can stay one more on linebackers. DeMarvion Overshown, yes, it was the Oklahoma game. So if anybody wants to go back and just watch the Oklahoma game from DeMarvion Overshown,
that whole game,
like you said, if you could just base it off one game, and it's like near first round talent for DeMarvion Overshown. I'm not saying he's a first round talent. Probably end up being bottom of the top 100, maybe top 75 if he's I think maybe a third round guy. So converted safety kind of fits the mold of what the Jets want. Somebody just ran a 4.59, and I completely forget who it was, but it was pretty impressive, and they looked a lot faster than that. But moving on, we can get to the position.
Derek Hall was a 4.57.
Yeah, Derek Hall, and then Owen Papa ran a 4.50, which is great. Noah Sewell's up right now, and I feel like he dropped some weight. He's 246. They had him listed at 260, so I think that'll help his scores here in the 40. I don't know, man. I'm not sold on Noah Sewell or Henry To'oTo'o. I mean,
we talked about them. I don't think they're bad, but I watched them and I'm like, I don't get the hype. I think Sewell's better than To'oTo'o, but I don't know. Like, I didn't watch them and go, oh wow, like I want that guy.
Yeah, he ran a 4.72.
Good player.
Yeah. Sewell just ran a 4.72. I don't know. People question his lateral mobility and, his overall athleticism. So I feel like that could be on par for what people want him to run. I feel like that's a bit slow for what the Jets specifically like out of linebackers.
For posting some of these 40 times.
Yeah, absolutely. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, to the position that I don't think the Jets will draft, but if they do draft a couple of these guys, I swear I won't care at all and just make a strength a strength. The rich get richer. That's cornerback. I don't know if you've seen the recent trollings of one DJ Reed on Twitter, but he said, things are getting crazy, DBU, with a bunch of eyeball popping emojis. And I assume it was in light of the Jalen Ramsey release and the potential of Jalen Ramsey being a New York Jet. I don't think he's been linked to the Jets, and I don't think the Jets are, quite frankly, interested in Jalen Ramsey. But
did he get released?
I'm sorry, expected to be traded. I'm sorry, I butchered that.
I was like,
No,
wow.
he
I guess
tweeted
that trade
that.
proposal didn't go so well.
He tweeted out, he's like, they would never, like, I would never be cut. Like, that's not who Jalen Ramsey is. That's what it was. Yes, he's expected to be traded. Jets haven't been linked. I don't think the Jets would give up capital for him, but it was rumored that during his draft process, he was questioned as a safety or a corner, and it could have gone either way. Somebody tweeted all-pro safety Jalen Ramsey. New York Jets all-pro safety Jalen Ramsey sounds pretty damn good. And I'm like, well, when you entertain it like that, yeah, let him roam the backfield. But I don't think he's coming to a new team, trying to get safety money. He wants cornerback money. And I don't know if there's a position for him on the boundary. And I don't think you're putting Jalen Ramsey in the slot, although weirder things have happened, I guess. Michael Carter is one of my favorites, and I don't want him to be off the field. So I like our cornerback group, but Jalen Ramsey is kind of enticing at the same time. Getting into the draft prospects, though, because there's a ton of them at the top of this draft. Glenn, who you got at cornerback?
Because the Jets are so rich there, I haven't watched a ton. We know I love Joey Porter. I've mentioned him several times. Some guys outside of round one who I really like, Deontay Banks out of Maryland, Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami, who is, I said, I think maybe pound for pound the most physical corner in this class. It shows up on defense and as a punt returner. Wanted to mention one other guy real quick who, one second, where'd he go? I lost him now. It was another, where'd he go? No, I lost him. I had a name here that I wanted to mention because I watched one of their games earlier today. Actually, let me see. I can pull him up real quick.
Yeah, I think I have
Cam Mitchell. That was it. Cam Mitchell, Northwestern.
Cam Mitchell.
I don't know what it is, dude. Like TCU
Northwestern.
and Northwestern, I often flip their players because I think like the similar colors when I was a kid and I first started watching. Like TCU was having a nice little run and Northwestern was, playing some of their better football. Ever since for years, I'm always like, I'll be like, Skoronski is TCU, no Northwestern, no like I flip back and forth those two schools for some reason. So I had to double check myself. But Cam Mitchell, physical guy, shows good anticipation, breaks on the ball in the air. And again, I haven't looked at a ton of corners because I just late round developmental guy maybe, but especially if the Jets, I mean, they got to make some moves. I don't think they're only making 6 picks, but if they do, then that's going to be a little bit rough.
Yeah, and that's currently 6 picks, and that's, with the looming question of Aaron Rodgers, which could potentially mean less than 6 picks. So I think it's interesting to see how Joe Douglas does work that arsenal of picks, whether he moves up or back and tries to use next year's capital or what have you. Going to be honest, I don't have a single thing written in my database about Cam Mitchell, not even a height, weight, anything. So that's completely new to me. You'd mentioned Deontay Banks, and he's one of 5 guys. Like I said, as soon as I got access to this database, I just immediately went in and started watching wide receivers and corners. I started with Devon Witherspoon, and he's one of my guys. I mean, he's probably going to be the cornerback 1 of most people's boards. He's certainly on top of mine. Obviously, he's up there with Christian Gonzalez and Joey Porter Jr. But Devon Witherspoon, he was supposed to be a Senior Bowl guy. He ended up not going to the Senior Bowl because Daniel Jeremiah had him mocked inside like his top 15 or something the week before, and he probably just said, hey, you know what? That's fine by me. I don't really need to go showcase anything else. Just amazing hitter. He's only 180 something. I believe he'll weigh in at like 182, 183 maybe. And he packs a punch. Like some of these guys that I'm going to talk about are a little bit heavier cornerbacks, like in the 200 range. Witherspoon's in the 180s, and it doesn't matter. He plays like he's a 200-pound cornerback. Sticky in man coverage. Sticky is all hell in man coverage, honestly. Great instincts, great ball skills. Just all around, I have him slightly graded higher than Christian Gonzalez and Joey Porter. But my bias of like watching him on tape, I would love Devon Witherspoon at 13. I really don't care about need at that point. I would hope that they address other needs if they're going to go cornerback at 13. Devon would be my guy. But I watched Joey Porter Jr. and Christian Gonzalez, and I came away impressed, and I liked them. They're first round grades for me, but I don't know, something about Christian Gonzalez kind of worried me. I don't know. He just went low for every tackle, and I just felt like it was going to lead to a lot of misses if you're going around the ankles. And Joey Porter Jr., I mean, again, sticky in coverage, instinctual. He could peel off of, a corner sail route and come back into a flat route and pick it off or get his hands on it and nearly intercept it. But like Dom C said in our group chat, I felt he was a little handsy when I got to all 22 and I could watch him. I was like, he's just a little handsy at the top of these routes. Of course, everybody nitpicked Sauce down the stretch because he was so damn good that anytime he put his hands on anybody, 6 or more yards down the field, holding, it's holding 5 yards. It doesn't work like that. You can't call holding or DPI on every play, but it's going to get called. And Joey Porter could be a victim of that if he doesn't clean it up. But he's got the pedigree. He's Joey Porter's kid, for goddamn. It doesn't matter. I feel like
the arms, man, the length on his arms, it's ridiculous.
Oh my goodness. The first thing I wrote was just not a long build, but long arms, which that's all you really need at corner. I don't care. Do we see DJ Reed out there? He's 5'9",
he can get burned and stick his arm up in the air and still bat the pass down.
Exactly. And I feel like the Steelers, they got to be the floor for this guy. Like if they get to his pick and he's there,
I think that's where he goes.
Like that's Joey Porter's kid. Like you can't just look over that legacy aspect of it. I thought that'd be a great, way to full circle that whole family aspect.
Years ago, Al Toon's kid was coming out of Wisconsin at wide receiver, and I wanted the Jets to take him, and he didn't pan out. He was in the league for a couple of years, and he was out. But I thought, man, Al Toon's kid, how cool! Well, Al Toon's one of the earliest players I remember watching.
Yeah. We also talked about Victor Green's son, the running back from North Carolina. So it's kind of just crazy. I mean, you look at it next year, mock draft pick 1.01.
I would love for any of those guys. Victor Green, Ray Mickens, love those guys.
Yeah,
I would love to see their kids carry on.
Now you got like Marvin Harrison Juniors and stuff. It's wild.
Yeah, he wasn't a Jet, but I want that guy too.
Exactly. And then the last guy, a smaller guy, Clark Phillips. He's a guy that I watched in the summer. Haven't gone back and done the deep dive on him, but I mentioned him like mid-season this year. He had a 3 interception game, and 2 of them were brought back for pick sixes. So like he absolutely turned that game on its head. I'll have to pull up the who the opponent was, but anytime you get 3 picks in a game and 2 go back to the house, I mean, here's a difference maker, and I think that's Clark Phillips. He kind of has that I'm small, but I really don't give a shit attitude, kind of like DJ Reed, and he's gonna stick his face in the fan type of thing. He's gonna play through you, play your hands. He has really good instincts, and I think at cornerback, the thing that I mentioned a lot is instincts, and you need to have instincts at corner. You can't just be out there guessing what guys are going to do. And you just see from all the guys that I've named, they see something and they know how to react to it right away. They aren't hesitating. And they're always right on the ball. They're never behind. So I think obviously corner is not a need for us, but I've fallen in love with a lot of these guys. They're really high up on my board. And I think Clark Phillips is going to end up in that top 50 range for me, probably basically a first rounder, but not. So that brings us to our last position, safety. A need, not like corner. It is a need. Safety is a need, obviously, opposite Jordan Whitehead. LaMarcus Joyner is probably going to retire. He was contemplating it last year, and now I think it's just going to be official that he is going to retire or definitely not be on the Jets. So they're going to have to replace him somehow. Do you have any names on here that you think would be a good LaMarcus Joyner replacement?
Funny we just mentioned players' kids, and people might think this is somebody's kid, but it's not. I looked into it because I'm like, I don't know if I can root for this guy.
I thought so.
Jason Taylor II, not that Jason Taylor. His dad was a good Jason Taylor. But Jason Taylor II, Oklahoma State, you watch their games, and the guy, he's just all over the place. He's constantly, we say all the time how tough it is to watch DBs on game film live games because they're off the screen so often. But this guy made so many plays on the ball, just kept seeing him. I'm like, this guy, he's either got great instincts or he's the luckiest DB on the planet because he keeps getting to the ball, batting passes, intercepting passes. Looks like he's a late day 3 projection, but I wouldn't mind seeing him. Another guy who falls into the players I liked last year and didn't watch a lot of this year, Trey Dean from Florida. He, of course, closed out the Senior Bowl with that interception. he's another good player, someone I liked last year. Ronnie Hickman out of Ohio State, Jamie Robinson out of Florida State. So there's some good players out there. I know some of your guys you're going to mention. I'm not going to steal him. Jair Brown, I've only watched one or two of his games. Didn't see him do a whole lot. And of course J.L. Skinner, who we've mentioned, and everybody likes Brian Branch. Like, how do you not like Brian Branch?
Yeah, exactly. JL Skinner, I haven't confirmed it, but I did see he tore his bicep. I don't know if that was in training for the combine or what have you. I'd have to go back and double check that, but I believe he did tear his bicep. Hickman, he's a guy that I feel like a lot of Jets fans fell in love with during the Senior Bowl week. I didn't see it on film with him. I forget who it was, but there was a running back broke open in the open field, and it was just him and Hickman. He didn't even put a move on. He just kind of like turned his body and ran the other way, and just Hickman couldn't do it. And I'm not saying that's indicative of who he is, but that was my first exposure to him. So when I got down to the Senior Bowl with Hickman, I was like, all right, I want to see the positives in this guy. And there were some, I think he's a small guy. He's barely over 6 foot, 6'3", 209 pounds. He was okay. I don't think he's, the second, third round guy that people are mocking him to be. I would probably say day 3, but I realistically think you could find a day 3 safety that could replace LaMarcus Joyner. The guys that I'm going to mention probably aren't day 3 guys and probably fall into that day 2 bucket. I don't know if there's any safeties outside of Brian Branch that should be in that first round conversation, but Antonio Johnson, if they want to go into a mold of somebody that they don't have at safety, which is a tall, long athlete, Antonio Johnson would be the guy. A ton of box play, though. I'm very concerned about how much free safety he's played at college, and if he is able to be a even part-time, half-time, 3/4 of the time free safety player. I would prefer somebody to be more rangy and have experience at the position rather than just, oh, you're tall, go back there and play the deep part of the field. But Antonio Johnson, really intrigued me. I did want to mention Jason Taylor II. The first time I saw him on film, he broke up a pass. It was a slant against Quentin Johnston, the TCU wide receiver, at the goal line, and he just fought through his hands. And I was watching.
That was in the end zone, wasn't it? Right on.
Yeah, I was watching Johnston at the time, and then that guy, Sanders broke it up, and I was like, who is that guy? Like, that was a great play. And then it's Jason Sanders II, the guy that you told me about when he got added to the roster at Senior Bowl. So really intrigued by him. He's the Oklahoma State guy. He's a small guy, 5'11", 7/8", 208 pounds. And realistically, outside of Johnson, I don't have a single guy on my database who's taller than 6'1". And
right.
I don't know if that's just I don't have enough eyes on. This is every safety at the combine right now that I have a height on, except for Brandon Hill from Pittsburgh. And Johnson is 6'3". That's not official. Like I said, the next guy is 6'1". So it's a small safety class. The 2 guys I'm going to name are small. One has a ton of free safety experience. The other, pretty much a box-only guy in college. Sidney Brown, he's the box-only guy. Versatile athlete, good ball skills, just rocked up physique. Him and his brother came in like they had just done like a Mr. Universe competition. Oh, this is the Jason Sanders player down here.
Jason Taylor.
Jason, that's it. I keep calling him Jason Sanders. God damn it. Yep, here he is, slant up top, just fights through the hands. I love that about any defensive back. If you're willing to just play through the ground, you're not going to surrender the rep. I love that. So Jason Taylor, not Sanders. Got it. Sidney Brown, back to Sidney Brown. Versatile, athletic. He played 742 snaps in 2022. 440 of them came in the box. So this guy is like a 2/3 box type of guy. They had him line up against tight ends, and then they had him line up against slots at the Senior Bowl. He did fairly well, undercutting a lot of passes to the tight ends. Thought he did well. I'm not sure if he's a fit for the Jets, but I love his athleticism and his projection. The guy that I think should be the replacement for LaMarcus Joyner, Christopher Smith II from Georgia. Certainly a guy I've talked about before on this pod. I watched him in the summer. I watched a little bit more of Georgia. I mean, you just see glimpses of him anytime you watch Georgia. Versatile. Dax Hill is the guy I keep going back to, but he leans free safety a lot. So opposite of Sidney Brown, this guy played 812 snaps in 2022. 67% of them came at free safety. So he's the guy that I think could be the rangy. He's small. Like I said, he's small, 5'11", I believe. At the Senior Bowl, he measured. So he's not going to wow you with his length or anything like that, but he's rangy. He has great ball skills. He's a 4 or 5 year starter at Georgia, so he's intelligent as all hell. Here he is, 5'10 and a quarter, 188, so very small. I really don't care because LaMarcus Joyner was small, and he did okay. He led the team in interceptions. I truly think Christopher Smith II could be that and more. So those are my safeties. I know we're running a little bit over time. I know you're at work, so any last thoughts on any of these prospects that we've talked about or any of the Jets news that has come down?
No, nothing in particular, man. Like I said, just like I said to you in that message the other day, this is the first time I feel like the draft is getting here too fast because I'm trying to get spun up. I want to have data and highlights and clips of every single player that gets drafted. I don't know how close I am, but I know I'm looking at the calendar, and it used to feel like I look at the calendar now and the draft feels 10 years away. Feels like it's 10 minutes away because there's like I said, man, I start at the bottom and now I'm just getting into these guys where some of these guys are so good. There's just millions and millions of plays to choose from, and to get acquainted with these guys. And there's just some really, really good players. Especially like I love the tight end group. I love the linebacker group. Some of the mid round wide receivers. Jason Brownlee, who I mentioned last week. I don't know if you had a chance to listen. I know we both every now and then we discuss the TDN, the draft dudes pod.
Yeah.
They did their combine preview and they kind of closed with name a sleeper, and they mentioned Brownlee, who I had in my article today and mentioned last week. So I'm curious to see how he does out there. I think because there's not a lot of big bodied receivers. Not even the wide barrel chest guys. There's not a lot of tall guys. And Brownlee is sort of like, I think he's going to come in at around 6'3". And if he plays as well, or if he tests out as well as you would expect him to based on how he's played, I like him as a prospect. So looking forward to see some of these results come rolling in.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting that they did mention it. I forgot to tweet at you when they said it, but yeah, I kind of perked up when I heard his name. I was like, oh, that's familiar to me now.
Yeah.
There's another name. It just floated out of my brain, but that's what happens. Bryce Ford Wheaton from West Virginia, another slightly bigger receiver. I forget who I was watching, one of the DBs.
And Dontavian Wicks, I like. Dontavian Wicks, I like.
Yeah, from Virginia. Yep, exactly. And
Yeah.
I was like, damn, Bryce Ford Wheaton keeps coming down with these passes. So I did what you did. I wrote his name down to the side as I was continuing watching my guy. And he's somebody I wrote down immediately I have to get eyes on because we need a Corey Davis replacement if and when that time comes. And there's not that many of them in this draft. And I'm cool with being small at wide receiver, but I don't think the Jets and Nathaniel Hackett are. So they're going to want at least somebody to play the Z or the X that's 6'2" or more. So it's going to be exciting. Like you said, it kind of creeps up on you. We're already in March. It's ridiculous. The combine's literally happening as we're speaking. So before you know it, pro days are going to be over and, free agency have come and gone, all the waves, and we'll be right there talking about draft. But we'll be here keeping you informed with everything. As soon as there's quarterback news, we will jump on that night. We can't guarantee within the hour because we have jobs and we can't afford to not go to work and get paid. So we'll be there that night, though, breaking down the news if and when it happens. For Glenn Naughton, you can follow him on Twitter at AceFan23. Follow his draft account. He's really pumping out prospect clips. That's at Jets Picks, at Jets Picks. Follow me on Twitter at Tereman. Follow Jet Nation on all social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll be back next week. I'm not exactly sure the topic, but probably just reviewing combine guys that exploded and really bumped up their stock.
Talking about the new quarterback.
I hope, like we said, it's going to be soon. It's got to be next week. So
yeah.
Until next time, appreciate everybody tuning in. Chat, you guys are amazing. Until next time, let's go Jets.